Tonight we have the West Coast premiere of Good Boy. And his friend and roommate and star of the film, Indy the Dog, is here.
I guess I'm next. I should never have come here.
Hello everyone and welcome to Hollywood at Ovation with Jorge Amir. And a few nights ago we attended the West Coast premiere of the film Good Boy. And we'd like to share with you our opinion of this film and the review that we will be giving it. But before, please remember to like, subscribe, and share our podcast so we may find a wider audience who can also enjoy in our Hollywood movie viewing review and happenings experience. Good Boy is about a dog called Indy who is put in some very interesting circumstances in a house that seems to be haunted. Now, if you like films that have to do with dogs, or if you're a dog lover or pet parent, you will love this movie just because the dog himself. Indy is quite a dog. He's got lots of expression, and as an actor, he comes across as a very, very fine canine. He exhibits a lot of emotions, and he actually goes through a lot in this movie. And there's some very scary moments, a few strong, organically well set up scary moments that will scare you. And everything about this movie is about the dog, so do not forget that. And that's what I love about this movie. This movie has its human companion, which you see far and few in between. You actually don't really get to see his face a lot, but you know he's there and he's going through some stuff. And we're not going to give away any spoilers, but just know that he's got some health problems, and the dog is sort of like his companion service best friend. Everything is in this movie is actually being shot from the dog's point of view, which is the effective way to have shot this film for this specific type of movie. It's not like The Conjuring or The Exorcist or anything. I think it's more like Poltergeist with the dog being the star of it. And it is more anxiety inducing than it is extremely scary throughout. just because you can't help but to constantly worry about Indy the dog, because he's such a lovable dog that you just cannot take your eyes off of him, and you're always rooting for him, as you should for the whoever is heading a film. You know, you always want to root for the lead to overcome his troubles, to find the right person, to be happy, whatnot. Here in this film, you're constantly rooting for Indy the dog. The setup for the movie is very original in the sense that it puts this dog in this house that seems to be haunted, and there's a few moments that will really surprise you towards the end, because it comes like totally unexpected, and as you think the film is going somewhere, it goes somewhere else towards the end. So the movie is very effective in its originality and its freshness and its point of view from the dog, and the style of filmmaking that was used to create an environment filled with anxiety, at times tension and fright. And for that, we're giving this film 8 minutes of ovation out of 10. 8 for all the wonderful, magnificent performance that they were able to get from the dog, and also for the setup and the originality of the point of view from a dog being in a haunted house. And what's interesting about this as well is like we all have pets, and we also have that gut feeling when we see our pets staring at something very specific that we can't see. What is he staring at? And your mind can go off quite easily with those thoughts, thinking there's probably a spirit there's something we can see, there's a ghost, an entity. All of those irrational thoughts become true in this movie, Good Boy. Hence the frights that you will experience in the film, which are quite organic, to say the least, because it's done from the dog's point of view. Going to the movie expecting something different, expecting something fresh. This movie is, there's been other, dog movies like Air Bud, and there's For the Love of Benji, and the whole series of Benji movies. This is sort of like The Lovable Benji, but in a haunted house, to describe it. And I think you will enjoy it for what it is. We stayed after and recorded the Q&A with the filmmakers. Now I do want to warn you, you might actually want to see the film first before you see this Q&A, unless you're really totally curious about how this was all put together. Then you may continue viewing, but the warning is you might find a spoiler or two within the Q&A that we're about to present.
You know, at my house we have to go to doesthedogdie.com, but I never thought to check, does the dog suffer an existential crisis? This is such a great idea. It works on so many levels. Where did this come from?
Yeah, I think every person who's had a dog in their life at some point has wondered, why is my dog barking at nothing or staring into an empty corner? And with that as a starting point, we figured out how to tell a story entirely from a dog's perspective, kind of using the tropes of horror films where you frequently see a dog who moves in with his family into a house that was just such a good deal, and that's weird, the dog won't go into the basement. This is something, you feel like you see everywhere. Poltergeist, was one of the chief inspirations, which begins with the golden retriever clearly clued into the supernatural before the humans. And this is that entire dog story.
Yeah, the great dog E-Buzz from Poltergeist.
Exactly right.
So was that, there was no static television. Was there kind of an inspiration in there, like somehow in there from Poltergeist?
Absolutely. There's the hard cut to static TV. That's just one of several, homages to horror films that I both love and were influences on this movie.
And we're in a 1922 movie palace where the first great actors were dogs. Rin Tin Tin, Strongheart, all these great dogs.
Totally, yeah.
And this is a great hero dog that you had. Was Indy the inspiration to this film?
So when we started with the idea that we were going to make a movie, around a canine protagonist, Indy wasn't in my life or anyone's life. He didn't exist. We took several years trying to just crack the story, and we got Indy, my wife and I, who produced the film, just to be our friend and companion, and started making these short films as kind of a test as we were figuring out how to write the story. Originally, it was just recreating scenes from The Shining, subbing in Indy for Danny, just to figure out. I don't know what to do with that stuff. I don't think it's really shareable, but you can imagine figuring out how to even get the camera on Indy's eye level to do the reverse shot, have the camera move in sync with the character who's a dog who, I cannot say this enough, does not know he's in a movie. It's pretty tricky. So we started out just making the movie with Indy because he's my own dog and he was around, and then people were responding to him so strongly. We let him lead a whole movie.
Does he have the name Indy because he looks like Harrison Ford?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Because when I was watching, he has that fear face a little bit, and I was like, he reminds me of Harrison Ford. Yeah, let's do it.
So, Indy is not used to the limelight. So when Indy comes out, if folks want to show your appreciation, if you don't mind signing applause, he just doesn't know what big loud noises are. So if Indy can hear us off camera. So Indy will just be entertaining himself.
So on anyone's phone, there's so many pictures of their dog, but you had such a cinematic dog, and one of the great things about this film is just the lighting through everything, telling the story through the lighting. How often did you take Indy and just pop him up, get in spots, and just mess with the lighting?
So with Indy, very little, and part of the reason for that is that Indy can only work a very few number of hours a day, and that's largely due to his attention span, and we wanted to use those hours to actually shoot. So we had a doll version of Indy commissioned called Fake Indy, or Findy. Findy was both his stand-in for all the lighting setups, and then did some of the more extreme stunts you see. So there's an uncanny doll we have of Indy that was useful for both before we shot and then also, for a few specific shots themselves.
I can relate. I can only work for a few hours a day too, due to my attention span. There's some incredible shots. One of the shots I remember from this year is the shot of Indy in that house looking out and the lights coming off. Was that something that you had found in that? Are some of these ideas storyboarded beforehand?
Yeah, so I storyboarded the whole film ahead of time, very loosely. This is not a film where I could have drawn with high precision what I was exactly looking to do. Indy appears to be a very good boy, and he certainly is, but again, does not know he's in a movie, cannot hit marks. The way we had to work is that we worked off the storyboards and a script, but there was a lot of, my co-writer would call it horror improv that was going on to figure out how to deal with him as an X factor, because sometimes the way we anticipated he would enter a scene just couldn't happen, or he would do something a little bit different. So there was certainly a lot of planning, but we also had to be really flexible and embrace whatever Indy could give us.
What was the most complicated or difficult setup?
So it's probably surprising to hear, especially if anyone has ever worked on a film, the scenes that involved a lot of movement where, there's a shot where Indy starts in a hallway and then goes into this back garage and the camera follows him from point A to point B to point C where he then freezes. Things like that were actually pretty straightforward. We would just lay a literal breadcrumb trail for him to follow. He's very motivated by food, which you can see. On the other hand, things that should have been easy, and certainly would have been if you had a human actor, tight emotional close-ups. At the end of the film, where he's covered in the mud and the water, it's no hardship to get him wet or muddy, but to hold a very specific spot and just look in a very narrow field of focus, where the eye line is super important, took actually several days. I think we were just saying, I think we started to try to get that shot on a Monday, didn't have it by Tuesday, and maybe by end of day Wednesday, we got the shot that you see in the film. So the things that should have been easy were hard, and the things that were hard were somewhat straightforward.
How long was the entire shoot?
So it was a very unusual production. As I mentioned, you can only film a few hours a day, so the standard day on a film is a 12-hour workday. We didn't come close to that. But that being said, by calendar dates, we filmed over 400 days over 3 years. And the majority of the time for principal photography, when we were getting all the indie footage, it was just myself, Indy, and this is my wife, Kari. She's the film's producer. And even more impressively, this is her first film that she's produced. She's a scientist, which turns out it's easier to teach a scientist to make movies than the other way around.
Because he looked so good all the way through. How many groomings and baths did he have to get for continuity?
It wasn't so much for continuity. Here, do you have an estimate?
Well, we always gave him a bath when he actually needed a bath. So, I don't know, maybe 10?
Yeah, I think there were probably 10 baths he needed. He needed more than 10 baths over 3 years. Most of them we tried to film just to, make good footage out of it when we could.
And working with Shane in this, how was that relationship and working together?
Yeah, so Shane Jensen plays Todd, and nothing about this movie is normal. Shane Jensen plays Todd the same way James Earl Jones plays Darth Vader. So the body of Todd you see in the film is me, and sometimes Kari, depending where I had to be in relation to the camera. Shane, our actor, then went back in, and all the human voices, the only voices there are added through ADR, which was a unusual process that's challenging under the most normal circumstances. The actors, so Shane, who plays Todd, and Ariel Friedman, who plays Vera, needed to add their performances to the scene after the fact, which is hard enough just to make the performances good, but then also had to match the physicality of what we were doing on set as the stand-ins, which was not being done with the consideration of performance. It was all for Indy's benefit. So entirely what's being said on set is just gibberish nonsense, that dog commands, silly sounds to get him to look a certain way. It's all being rebuilt in post, and that doesn't take anything away from the performance, it just makes it that much harder.
That makes so much more sense now that I was like, boy, Indy likes Shane. No, it's you, of course. He's he's such a good boy, when he was barking outside and seeing stuff outside and how to react to that, what did you do? How did you get him to run to the window and freak out on those?
Sure, so if you're talking about it's the wide angle shot where Todd leaves and he starts barking. So nothing is ever as it seems. In that particular instance, I'm pretending to play fetch with a dog that doesn't exist, but Indy doesn't know that. And we're not seeing, the upset we're seeing is fear of missing out. So, and then, he goes to the window, and it's funny, that scene always makes me, the reaction I just hear from the audience is, I think, really validating, because I think all horror movies should, play on an anxiety we have, and I think the main one I knew about going into the film was that we all worry that our dogs can maybe see something we can't. But the one I didn't realize would resonate so much is the fear that when we leave home, our dogs are devastated.
Larry Fessenden, how did he get involved in this?
So we reached out to Larry. It's a very unique and novel project. We actually met him through the embroidery artist who made some of the horrifying dog embroidery in the film. They were friends. Larry's like the patron saint of independent horror movies. And I can say after working with Indy for 3 years, again, never reading a script, not frequently doing what he was supposed to do, to have Larry come in, who knows exactly how to do that, and just nail it, and then be an amazing cheerleader for the film was just like the best.
And the creature, can you talk about that?
Oh, of course. So the creature, I also play the creature. I play Todd's body and I play the creature. That's just me covered head to toe in a really foul mud. Yeah, it looked great on camera, but it did not smell awesome in reality.
So is everything, maybe not the fog, is that fog's not practical? Is everything
The fog is practical, yeah.
Wow.
It's all practical. Indy's real, there's no CGI Indy. The advantage of filming for over 3 years is that you can wait for the right weather conditions to get your day exteriors shrouded in fog. I will say the rain is caused by rain machines, but those were still built by us, and those were real water droplets.
Was there a fox though that came?
Oh, the fox.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said the fog.
Yeah.
No, the fox was filmed on green screen and put in afterwards. Yeah. That would have been amazing.
Yeah. I was like, whoa. We have time for some questions out here. I know there must be a ton. Right? Sure, whoever said that. Location manager, if you didn't hear, is asking about where these locations that were shot.
Yeah, so we filmed while we were working out of New York City. That location is actually just 45 minutes from New York City in upstate North Jersey. Although most people do think it is upstate New York. The location, finding that spot was one of almost our most difficult casting. Casting in a house isn't really the right way to put it. You would know. But we needed a place that both could look like a haunted house, inside and outside, and we could both live there and make the movie there. I should have mentioned, we were living in the house while filming, again, just the three of us for 400 days before we got into post and the team significantly expands. But we were living there, making it look like a haunted house, and making this movie on nights and weekends for a long time.
It's a bit like when David Lynch did Eraserhead. That's kind of a similar thing where they did it on that, lived in there. Who else we got over here? It's also right there.
It's funny, speaking of David Lynch, I thought the sound design on this movie was just immaculate. It sounded really, really good. Could you talk a little bit about the process of kind of crafting that world of sound, since there's not, since like the dialogue is kind of sparse and we're really focusing on the small movements.
Yeah, question about the sound design, just the thinking and practically pulling it off. I totally agree. I am still discovering new things the folks who made both the music and the soundscape did. They did incredible work, especially since they rebuilt it from the ground up, because our production audio is not what you hear. It's us, again, just saying silly things to Indy to, create the expression of a dog who's vexed by invisible forces. We creatively, the mission we applied to the cinematography, kind of every level, was that it had to make sense and work for the perspective of a dog. That's why you have these scenes where there are important human conversations going on, and Indy will just wander away because that doesn't make any sense to him. There's a lot of different layers to it, but it was, it's a small team that pulled this whole thing together. It was Brian Goodhart, Kelly Usman, and then Sam Bose Miller, our composer, kind of working very much in tandem to, create sounds that sometimes sounded like music and music that sometimes sounded like sound effects. I'm so proud of the work they did. It's really incredible stuff.
I thought they did a good job with, the cries and the whispers. It wasn't overdone a little bit. It was just the right amount.
Thank you for noticing that. That was something we really wanted to strike the right balance on. There's such a tendency, and I think I've watched a lot of dog performances, and I think dogs don't make that much noise as you see them do in reality, or hear them in reality. So that was a really important balance that we wanted to get right.
And you just talked about the camera, like sometimes you're like an Ozu kind of, you're down with the dog, and then sometimes you're way up above, looking down, getting that. How did you find that balance between, we're going to bring the camera up here to look down on Indy?
Well, so much of the camera work and the framing, we're trying to, create shots that are conveying meaning that we can't get from his performance otherwise. So the shots, the angles, the shot size, it's all there to kind of help suggest what Indy is meant to be feeling. We'll get questions a lot about, how did you get Indy to look scared? And the answer is, we didn't do anything. The filmmaking and the shot size and the juxtaposition of the shots is making you scared, and then you're projecting your feelings back onto him. So we were always trying to frame things in a way that would kind of give emotion to the scene and help bring his performance to life.
Couple more right there.
So something you mentioned, Indy obviously didn't know he was in a film, but for certain shots when you were trying to show he was scared, did you have to edit around his tail wagging if he was happy that he was hitting Mark?
Oh, that's such a good observation. The question was, do we have to edit around Indy's tail wagging? The answer is yes, and occasionally I have to crop it out. There's a few things that would really evaporate his performance. One was a wagging tail, but even more, a bigger kryptonite to a good dog performance is him panting. If he starts panting, all that kind of intensity and what looks like intelligence behind his eyes, it just evaporates. We always like to say we were going for, a performance style of Ryan Gosling in Drive, not Ryan Gosling in Barbie.
Yeah, there's one right there.
Did you use any film references, any dog film references like Benji or Cujo, or to kind of, as you were putting this together?
Yeah, so the question was about dog references that we used. And it wasn't so much, the answer is yes, and it was more about dog performance and other dog actors. So the gold standard, at least in my mind, we were shooting for is Jed. He's the dog from The Thing. He was also in the Ethan Hawke White Fang adaptation. Jed from The Thing is incredible. I still don't know how they pulled off some of those shots. You can hear Carpenter talk about working with him on the director's commentary. We were going for Jed level acting.
It seems like you also had a second dog that you were working. How was it like working with the other dog? How good?
So this was very much a family project. Kari's laughing because the second dog was not nearly as professional as Indy. So that was my parents' dog, who was also around. So Indy and he know one another, which is handy, but Indy's very focused, he's very driven, he loves to have a job. He even learned, the camera meant he was supposed to be doing something. Max, who plays Bandit, on the other hand, if you touched Max, he would just roll over on his back for belly rubs, which is tough when you're trying to get him to position him in just a specific spot. We still got it. He's a very good boy, but yes, not quite as professional as Indy.
Let's go over here somewhere, right there.
The answer is yes. So I shot and directed it and did the carpentry and the electric. It was just us for physical production. To clarify though, there's a small but mighty team in post that actually, makes it all work as, a final film. What we got were the raw materials, just the three of us. We worked with very minimal LED lights, which are programmable to do the lightning flashes you see. Just a note on lighting, I'm not a super experienced cinematographer, so I would rely on advice of people who knew more than I did. And a great piece of advice I was once given is that if you have an actor or a model or a subject that has great hair, just backlight them and they're gonna look awesome. Indy is made of great hair, so that's usually what we did.
So if it's just you guys making this, is there a point early on where you go, wait, are we crazy? Is this working? We're filming the dog. Is this gonna work, or are we crazy?
Do you want to answer that? Because the answer is yes.
guess I can get off the floor. Yeah, so in the beginning, what we did was, well, there were first a few shots that we got just to figure out how we were going to make the movie and figure out how it worked with Indy. And one of the first things we did was the finale of the film, so that rain sequence, and it took us 8 months to do, just to get those 5 minutes. It was every day, me suiting, or both of us, but me suiting up in rain gear, having Indy go out there, making sure he was appropriately wet to look sad. But it was getting that scene that I think really proved to us that we could do it, just because it's so intense and it was so, I hope you felt it was pretty affecting. And that was the moment where we thought, okay, we can definitely make this work.
What was the hardest part of the film? What was the most difficult scene or elements of this?
Actually so Ben talked about how, or I think you talked about how difficult it was to get the close-ups.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Actually this is a little bit silly, but for me personally, it was the scene in which he's dying. That was really difficult for me. I don't know if we talked about this, but like the gasping was really difficult for me personally. So it actually, Indy was easy, relatively speaking.
The last shot when he's looking out the window is so touching, as it's very emotional. It's very. When did that come?
This is what it was like to make the movie for 3 years every day. Go crazy eventually.
So, what were your inspirations? Tell me what Larry Fessenden's really like. So that is such an emotional ending. Was that? When did you find that in post, or what?
No, I mean, we always had the plan, the movie was going to end the way it would, that Indy would make it out and go off to this new life. In terms of like the right emotional, balance between, it's definitely a horror movie, but it is very affecting. It's so easy to, think of one's dog and, potentially saying goodbye to them yourself. We definitely could have made it sadder, but that part kind of took care of itself. Yeah, I mean, my co-writer and I would always remind ourselves, we're making a horror movie. This is not a drama first, but still, that ending is quite affecting.
It's a dog is such a great protagonist in a horror film, because if there's like a ghost or something in the basement, I run. Where a dog's like, maybe I should go check that out.
Absolutely. A dog can, it is absolutely logical for a dog to commit all of the sins that when we watch humans do it in a horror movie, we roll our eyes like, oh, come on. Like hearing a sound at night and going, hello, and investigating, that's exactly what a dog would do.
That's your job.
Tonight we have the West Coast premiere of Good Boy. And his friend and roommate and star of the film, Indy the Dog, is